everybody. Welcome back to the next episode of Art of the Card. Today we have Brian Rothmuller on. You can see him on Instagram at Sports Card Photographer. We're really excited to have him on today to talk with us about his process capturing incredible athletes and venues in all the major sports. He's worked with all the big companies, Topps, Upper Deck, and Panini. And so we're excited to have Brian on. Brian, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We're excited to talk to you about this. It's something I think people maybe overlook or don't think about, but your Instagram page, you do an incredible job of telling the story of these photos and showing before and like the photography that you take and then the end result.
To Chris's point, a lot of when people think about card art, or when we tell people, oh, we're doing a podcast, about art of the card, we do tend to gravitate towards our illustrators, towards our artists, right? And it's a little bit easy to overlook the photography because it's so prevalent within the hobby. We'd love to get your take on some of these deeper dive questions. But first, we are going to hit things off with a series of really quick questions that we kind of dubbed a little quick fire round. If you're ready, we're going to get this thing up and running.
Let's go.
What do you say, Brian? All right, man. So, favorite pro athlete, growing up or today, not necessarily one that you photographed, but just, your favorite athlete in general.
My favorite pro athlete growing up probably was Will Clark of the San Francisco Giants.
Nice.
Grew up in the Bay Area, and he was incredible. And I loved his swing, and he was probably my favorite player growing up. I don't know if I have a favorite player now. I have favorite players that I like to photograph, and once I see a player and take his picture, and if he has a lot of charisma, those are always players I gravitate towards. So.
If you were a pro athlete, what would be your sport of choice?
Probably golf, because I'm not great at it,
Nice.
But in terms of getting injured and it just seems like the best way to go.
Left-handed or right-handed, and you can separate that into possibly photography and also golf if you'd like.
Right-handed. Although when I was younger, I always thought I could hit left-handed, but probably not.
I'm right-handed and I bat and golf left-handed.
Nice.
So it's very. I used to switch hit when I was playing t-ball, but everybody hated it. So
Speaking of baseball, what would your walkout song be?
Ooh, probably The Natural.
And are you a longtime card collector yourself?
Yeah, I grew up collecting cards in the 80s. So, if you would have told my younger self that I would take pictures that would be on the cards that I collected when I was younger, that would have probably just blown my mind. So, I've collected cards since I was little. So.
Fantastic.
Cool.
Brian, you have survived the quickfire round. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Chris, you too have survived the quickfire round. Congratulations to you too,
barely.
sir. But let's get into that. Let's dive into that a little bit more, Brian. You said, you're a collector of cards as a kid and would kind of have, would have a hard time believing that you would actually grow up to do this sort of thing. What led you down this path? Was it a passion of sports or did you have a passion for photography at an early age?
Definitely always have had a passion for sports. Like taking pictures when I was younger, but you have a small little camera and, the pictures that you would take that I thought were amazing back then were, not even close to what, you can take now with the cameras. So, I didn't really get full into photography until about 10 years ago. I worked in advertising for maybe 20 years and then had some health issues and sort of had to switch careers and just sort of everything aligned at the right time. And it's just been great ever since. So.
And when you got into photography, did you start going and focusing on sports, or were you photographing?
Yeah,
other
well,
things?
I was working in advertising. I did some sports shooting on the side. I was self-taught. Just tried to teach myself anything I could do. Watched a bunch of YouTube videos. Just soaked up as much information I could get. Always was looking at pictures that other people were taking, trying to figure out how they made that picture, and what kind of angle they're shooting it from, and just sort of was a sponge for that information. And yeah, and then when I got started and doing it more full time, a lot of great photographers out there, and just try to get inspired by them, and put my own spin on things as well. And the card thing came up sort of later. It was one of my goals to get on a card, and then almost 2,000 cards later now. Yeah, I would have never thought I'd be having an Instagram writing stories about my pictures that are on cards. So it's just kind of evolved, and it's been great.
Very cool. So, like, getting your photos on the cards. Can you share a little bit about what that process is like? I know you mentioned you were photographing, sports, like venues or games, all the players and stuff. But do you like then send these photos to the card companies, or do card companies now know you, 2,000 cards later, like, hey, we need you to go to this event? Can you just share a little bit
Sure.
about that process of
So
how
so
the
I work for a wire service. So
Hmm.
my photos go up on a wire service, and then the card companies, they don't really have photographers anymore like the old days. Upper Deck
Hmm.
still has some photographers that they use for hockey, but Tops and Panini, they don't really have full time photographers. So most of their pictures that they grab are from the image wire. So I'll shoot a game, and my photos will go up there, and then it's sort of out of my hands. I sort of know what they're looking for, so I'm shooting for my pictures to get on cards, where maybe other photographers are just sort of, taking pictures to, getting ESPN.com, or various things like that. I have an idea of what the card companies are looking for now after doing it for a couple of years, and that's what I shoot. And once I shoot it, then it's sort of out of my hands, and they find the pictures they like. And I don't really find out until the cards come out, and it's sort of like Christmas Day. Every time a big release comes out, hop on eBay and look at the cards that people are posting for sale, and see if any of my photos make it. So um, yeah,
so
it's kind of
do
fun
you get
process.
notified like
I do
when
not.
you don't?
So I
Wow.
get uh, the pay cycle for when my photos get picked up by cards is normally like 3 to 6 months behind. So sometimes I'll see uh, something that got picked up by a company, and I'll be like, oh, I don't remember seeing that card. So then I'll have to go investigate it. But
Mm.
normally by then I've already seen most of them. So I don't really know what's going to happen until until they come
Hmm.
out. So
Yeah.
which is kind of fun. Um, and
Yeah, yeah. Describe that feeling when when a new set is released and you see some of your work, out there in the world.
it's a good feeling. It's it's fun because I like to look at the cards and see, okay, well, why did they select this pitcher? And sometimes there's a rhyme or reason. Sometimes that might be, a player that got called up at the end of the year, and that's the best pitcher they have, and it might be, kind of a bad pitcher. But um, yeah, I like to see what they selected, and see, oh, could I have taken that pitcher? Um, and when I do see one that features my photo, it's always gratifying. And sometimes they'll select a photo, and I'll be like, well, that's weird, I don't know why they selected that one. Like, there's another one in the sequence that's much better than that one that they took. So um but yeah, I mean, it's a fun process. um it's fun when a product comes out, and I have a picture like on packaging as well.
Yeah.
That's always really cool. So yeah, anytime a big release comes out, like the new Top series is coming out in, I think, 2 weeks. I've seen some pictures of stuff that they're sort of showing previews. I've seen some of my photos in there, but yeah, until it comes out, I sort of have no idea. So It's always
Well,
fun.
that's got to be a great feeling if you're in the previews because those are usually the bigger
Right.
cards or the hits, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, you
It's
really
funny
made it.
because
That
they do the previews and then in small print they say, final, these are mock-ups and final images may change. And I'm always like, no, don't change the image. That's my image.
yeah, approved for production.
Right.
You
That
know,
one's
looks
good.
good.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and use that one.
I was
Well,
surprised to
Yeah.
hear it's similar to like musicians. Like I had some friends in bands, like regional, rock bands, and they would all of a sudden hear their song or like a sample of their song on like a Bravo TV show or something, and it's like we had no idea that that was going to be on there. And you're watching like this popular show and you hear your music, so it's kind of a similar feeling. I was surprised to hear that, but it's interesting. They always got a kick out of it. So as
Yeah,
Jake said, it's got to
the
be fun.
first card I was ever on was a card of Buster Posey that I shot during the World Baseball Classic in 2017, um, and I saw it and then I did a double take and I was like, that kind of looks like my photo, and that was before like it would be not commonplace, but I would be like, yeah, that's my photo. So
mhm.
I did a double take and went back to grab the photo and compared it side by side and was like looking at every single detail. I'm like, could it have been the guy next to me? Is it really my photo? Um, and then when I realized it was pretty wild. It was like the first time you hear your single on the radio, like you said, it's like, wow, I never thought that
and,
that could be a reality. So
and that was a card that you saw online or one that you actually pulled out of
I
the
saw it
pack.
online. Yeah,
Okay, okay. Yeah, that's got to be such a rush. I mean, a childhood goal, to check that off the list. I imagine you were a bit hesitant. Like this is too good to be true, right?
right. Yeah, definitely. Because I would see other people, post that they had a picture on a card, and I'd be like, oh, that's cool. And it was definitely a goal for that year. Like, I wanted to have my picture, I think, on 5 cards. That was my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was pretty wild. And it sort of got me hooked. I'm like, okay, well, I have one. Like, let's go. Like, let's see how many I can do, and what are they looking for, and it really got me sort of back into cards. Like I would, you know, I'd be at Target and sort of look at, oh well, what's the the latest. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really buying much, um, and then when my photos started to get on cards, um, it opened my eyes to all the different sets that were out there and all the different cards, and just sort of brought that childhood joy back too that I had. So it was a really good feeling.
And did you shoot Buster Posey specifically, being a Bay Area kid, or did you shoot a bunch of different athletes there at the World Baseball Classic, and it just so happened that it ended up being Buster Posey that got on the card?
Yeah, normally when I shoot something, I just shoot the game, so I'm shooting everyone that's there.
Okay.
Obviously, um, I do my homework, so I know if a player just got called up, or I like to look at pitchers who are pitching for that day and see, what their windup looks like, how their delivery is coming, like what angle looks best. Is it from the right side, from the left side? So I sort of like to do my homework and then go from there. So I'm definitely not shooting for one specific person. I'm shooting for the whole game, and then whatever happens, whatever happens.
That's fascinating. It's like you have your own scouting report, in the way that the pitchers themselves might have, or the teams going into these games.
Yeah, you definitely
Um,
you definitely have to do your preparation, because if a pitcher comes in and he only throws to one or two batters or one or two innings, you have to make quick decisions in terms of, do I want to move to a different position? Do I want to stay here? Um, and then certain batters, when they fall through on their swing, are you going to see their face from the angle you're at? Are you not going to see their face because they have, that big face guard? Is it better shooting them from the other side? So all those things are going through my mind, sometimes too much. And I'm like, oh my god, I need to do this, I need to do that. And then you sort of overthink yourself, but you have to sort of go into the game at least with the stars that are going to be in the game, knowing or having an idea of what you want to do and what you want to capture, especially in baseball. Basketball, you're stuck in your one spot, and you can't really move around. So you do the best you can. But baseball, you have a little more leeway in terms of moving around and getting different angles.
So can you in baseball? Can you move, like, get up out of your seat, go to a different part of the ballpark? Like, can you
So
elaborate
there's
a little more on
yeah,
that?
there's photo wells at the stadium which
Hmm.
are sort of sunken next to the dugouts. The one at Dodger Stadium's actually in the dugout, but most of them are sort of outside. So there's a third base photo well and then a first base photo well. So in between innings, you can go from one to the other. Um, and then there's also some sort of what we call inside first and inside third, which is sort of closer to home plate, which you can shoot from as well at some stadiums. So yeah, you can move around, um, and it definitely gives you some different looks of pitchers and batters. And I like to shoot players in the dugouts as well. Those are some fun shots of that make for good cards if they're have just sort of unique pitchers that you don't see every so often. So it's always good to go to both sides to at least get those pitchers in the dugout as well. So
Very cool.
I imagine the dugout photos, you get a few more faces, right? There's less equipment.
yeah, you get a little more
Players might be a little bit,
personality
yeah.
too.
Hmm.
I like to go to my position well before the game, so when the players come out, to warm up, they're always a little more uh, and jovial and a little more loose. You can get some good pictures then. During the game, you just sort of have to be careful with how much you're pointing a camera at a player in a dugout. You can get a picture and then move off, but you don't want to just keep your camera you know right in front of a player the whole game and trying to get a reaction shot. So they're playing a game. You got to respect that, and they respect if you need to get a pitcher, but one pitcher is good, and then move off it and get back on the game. So
That sounds
there's a
like some.
delicate balance there, especially if a player is coming out of the game and mad and just giving up a bunch of runs. You sort of take that one picture and then uh, don't look back. Don't look back at that point. So
Well, I was gonna say that it sounds like there's a bit of unwritten rules, right? Like
yeah, I think
are
it's
so
just
often
being
applied in
it's being
baseball.
professional too. I think there's some photographers
Yes.
who might sort of tend to try to take more pictures of a player when he's dejected on the bench, but I try to follow what the team photographer does, or someone who's been around a lot, and they'll take the one or two pictures and then sort of move off and give the guys space. There's some players who just have a tendency to explode when they're in the dugout, and you just sort of leave them alone. You don't want to put your camera on them and make their life any worse. So there's photos that you want to get, and then there's photos like, okay, well, I don't need to take a picture of this guy in this sort of situation. So
Yeah. Well,
Well,
I feel like.
also
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
the reality of those photos aren't going to be the ones that sell
right, they're
necessarily
not going to be
either.
on cards,
Onto
but
the card.
they
Right.
they are they are newsworthy.
Sure.
Mhm.
If I took a picture of Kenley Jansen last year after he, I think, blew like three straight saves, I thought it was a good picture. He looked really
Hmm.
dejected, and I was fighting myself with going back and trying to take another one after I took the first one, but
Hmm.
um, it's a picture to document news, so you have to
Right.
take the picture, but just sitting on it and firing multiple frames away, that's paparazzi ish, which you don't want to
Hmm.
be. So
Very cool.
Well,
Joe, you had brought up a good point when you and I were chatting about, like, can you give us a little rundown of, like, equipment you like to use at games? Like, I'm assuming you take a few different lenses to get different, views with you. Just can you share a little bit about kind of your setup that you have?
I use Nikon So I have a Nikon cameras and Nikon lenses. I have a large 400 2.8 lens for shooting football and basketball. And then I have a smaller lens for uh, shooting basketball and maybe shooting sort of more close up dugout shots, those sort of things, or if a player's running towards me in football. And then just a wide angle lens, so if someone's super close. Um, so that's sort of what I shoot with. That's my portfolio of gear.
Very cool.
And you include all that photography information, all that photography equipment with each one of your posts on your Instagram, correct?
Yeah, I thought that would
Yeah.
be interesting because I remember when I started, um, I'd always be like, well, what lens are they using, and what are their settings? Because I can't seem to match what they're doing. Just getting a starting point. Okay, well, he shot it at this ISO or this shutter speed, and hopefully, aspiring photographers, they see that and they go, oh, okay, well, let me try that next time I'm shooting my son's game or something, and see where that gets me. So yeah, I thought that was a fun sort of little tidbit to add into the stories as well.
What prompted you to start telling stories with your posts? Or has that kind of always been how you view the work that you do?
Yeah, I don't really know. I wasn't sleeping much when I first started this, and I would have just like weird creative just brain dumps while I wasn't sleeping, and I thought, oh, it'd be fun to post some of my cards and pictures. In the first couple posts, I didn't really post the picture with it, just more to a description of how I captured it. Um, and then as I wrote a couple, I was like, oh, this is really fun, sort of telling the story and also reminiscing about, how I got the photo and thinking about, okay, could I have done it any differently? It made me critique my work a little bit too, which I thought was good. And yeah, it just sort of took off from there. I don't think I'm a writer, but I feel like I can share stories. And I think showing photos and then showing what the finished result is really cool. Especially in today's cards, I feel like they strip so many of these pictures away from their backgrounds, and and sometimes they Photoshop the picture. You really have no idea what the photo originally looked like to get to that final product. So, um, especially the ones that are like that, I think it's really cool to see what the photo looked like and what I was thinking and why I posted the photo, knowing that okay, well the background's terrible, but I knew they would take the photo away from the
Mm.
background and put it on some other sort of background. So yeah, I think it was a really interesting thing to do.
Do
Well,
you,
we'll leave the jury out on whether or not you're a writer, but I certainly will attest to your storytelling
Thank
abilities.
you.
For those who may be unfamiliar with your Instagram, the handle is Sports Card Photographer, all one word. And the way that it's set up, the way you have it set up, Brian, is you take a picture of the card, the finished piece. You'll also include the original photo, so sometimes several frames of those. And then you'll also include in the description, what you've called the story behind the photo. And it's not a small narrative. I mean, these are really, really fascinating and engaging stories. It's been a blast doing the little bit of research, for our episode tonight. Just being able to browse through these and read about all of your experiences. And like we've already covered, you also include the photography information. So really, for those that are listening or tuning into the pod, a very fun rabbit hole to dive down and read about all of these. Out of all of the thousands of cards that you've done, do you have 3 or 5 cards or stories that come to mind as some of your favorite?
Um, anything that I have some here. Anything that sort of brings me back to my childhood. Like Tops likes to use a lot of their their vintage designs on cards, and like this one here. Let me see if I can get it. Oh, it's a little. So this is
Yeah.
I think it's from last year. It's sort
Oh,
of
really?
bad, but it's from 86 Tops, and I
Mhm.
loved collecting 86 Tops. So the fact that my picture is on a card from 86 Tops is really cool. So anything like that is really cool. Um, I like to get these 5x7 cards that Tops makes, which is just sort of, it's more artistic for me. Let's see if I can zoom out.
Hmm.
So
Oh, wow.
um, so it's just a reprint of the
Cool.
card, but it's suitable for framing at some point.
Hmm.
But
Hmm. Yeah.
it just, the card is so small and doesn't do the photo, justice. So I really like the blown up versions of those cards. Two cards that the photos that I really like. One is this photo of Albert Pujols when he hit his 500th home run. Um,
Oh, wow.
Very
so
Look at
cool.
that swing.
so this was one of those instances where you'll have to read the story on this one, but I actually got caught in the wrong spot during the game. Um, the Angels hit around, and I didn't think Albert would get up in the inning that he did. So I moved to a different position to shoot the pitchers, thinking that, oh, well, he's not going to get up for 12 batters. Well, they ended up scoring a ton of runs. And with 2 outs, he got up with the bases loaded and hit a grand slam for his 500th home run.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but the fact I was in a different spot was actually good because everyone else's pitchers from the spot that I would have been in all looked the same, and I was the only
Mm.
person in this sort of spot to get this angle. Um, so that was definitely a memorable shot that I took, and then when it came on a card, it just sort of it uh, it made it all sort of all worthwhile. So that's one that I like, and then this other one, Albert. I'm not a big Albert fan, but um, I shot this in the dugout. He's standing for the national
Wow.
anthem, and out of all the Angels games I've done over the years, I've only seen him stand for the national anthem in the dugout this one time,
Mm.
and he actually was late out to the field, and the national anthem had started, so he just sort of stayed in the dugout, which is
Hmm.
right where the photographers were. So I quickly grabbed a small lens, took a couple frames, and then
Hmm.
looked away. And I always liked the photo, and then when it came out to be a card, uh, I always love when the photos that I like are on cards versus photos that I'm like, it's fine. It's just a picture of him batting. It's nothing special. Um, but I have my favorite photos here and there that when they show up on cards, it's really cool. This one I took of
Oh, yeah.
Fernando Tatis. He was in the batting on deck circle, and they were doing a pitching change, and he kind of looked at his manager, and he was like smiling and laughing. And when I took it, I really liked it, and it's been used on a couple cards, and um, just again, the photos when I like them and they show up on cards, it's great. Oh, one more here. Uh, so this was a box last year. It's a
Oh,
10
Mm.
nice.
box. So this was a picture of Mike Trout that I took. Um, so anytime my photos are used on packaging, it's always really cool too. So always have to pick up those when they when they surface. I always have to do a double take. I'm like, okay, that looks like my photo, and then look at the details. Like, okay, he's wearing a red armband with a black number. With the wristband has the white line halfway up. Like, I have to go to that detailed and then scroll through my photos
Hmm.
and be like, oh, there it is, or no, that's not
Yeah, yeah,
mine. So it's fun to do. It's sometimes it's disheartening when you think it's your photo and then you look and you're like, oh, that's not mine.
yeah.
Um, But
Does that happen like a lot? I mean, because I guess I'm just thinking like batters aren't changing their swings, right? Like they
yeah,
do the motion over and over again. So out of all the games, throughout a season, I'm sure there's, if you're doing like a close up to try to capture, waist up from a batting stance, like could probably be pretty similar. But it sounds like you don't get from just one card or five cards of your goal a few years ago to 2,000 cards. Like you clearly have crafted, this. But I'm sure there's similar, photographer or photographs out there that you have to do that comparison sometimes.
yeah, definitely. Like the more sort of just standard. Yeah, here's like. Uh, so this is
Mm.
just a normal batting stance. So normally, if I see the photo, I can
Mm.
tell. Okay, that looks like Dodger Stadium, or it looks like
Mm.
Anaheim Stadium or Oracle Park. So I can tell which stadium it's shot at, and then from there, um, you know, I can be like, well, it doesn't look like something I would take, or does look like the style of photo I would take. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely some that look like might be mine and they aren't, but I'm getting pretty good at looking at one and being like, okay, that I think that's mine. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, but
Are there
yeah,
any?
Otani is actually on the cover of the new tops, and the picture of him batting looked like one of mine, and then when I did a little further search, it wasn't. So it's like, oh
Mm.
man. But that's just you try to get it next time. So there's a lot of good photographers out there, and I can't get my photo on everything. And the things that I do get it on, I'm blessed that happens. So.
I'd imagine Otani's pretty fun to shoot, right, as a subject, just from
He
his.
is. He's really hard to shoot as a pitcher, though, because the angle that we sort of shoot from, he when he throws with a lot of ferocity, but he also sort of closes his eyes and makes this like intense face, which doesn't really bode well for pitchers because he
Mm,
just doesn't like his eyes aren't open, like focused like that. He's more like, you know. Um, so that's a little frustrating. You gotta pick and choose the angles again that you're shooting the pitcher from, and um, yeah, I mean it's the same thing with basketball. Certain players when they dribble up the court, they're just sort of like, they make sort of weird facial expressions that they don't think that they're making, but they just do. They their mouth's kind of open, their eyes are kind of weird. They don't really dribble. They just sort of like push the ball. So to get like a nice clean photo of them dribbling with a nice facial expression sometimes is actually harder than you might think.
hmm
Um,
Mm.
but you got to do the best with what you have to work with. So again, that comes with researching players too and seeing like, okay, well, when something good happens, they don't react. They don't have any sort of
Mm.
reaction. So if I'm not shooting, if they make a good play, I'm not shooting their reaction. I'm shooting Fernando Tatis reaction, who is behind him, not part of the play, but he's going to have a reaction. So just sort of knowing that and knowing what players to put your camera on, that just goes with familiarity of the players and the teams that you're shooting as well. So that's all research that you got to do, and game plan just like the players do. So.
Yeah, as you were talking about that, Joe, we didn't have this on our agenda, but is there a player that you have photographed like the most cards like of a certain player that you've shot over the years?
So I have a spreadsheet that's linked on my a Google spreadsheet that has I'm about 200 cards behind in categorizing all of them, but there's I think 1750 on it right now, um, and I think it was Mike Trout as of I think I almost had 100 Mike Trout cards, um, and Fernando Tatis was coming on strong, so he might have passed Mike Trout now, but those two are probably the two biggest ones in terms of the amount of cards that I've had.
Very cool.
And do you always track down a card every time that it's
I try
published?
to. It's sort of
Mhm.
originally when I started doing the spreadsheet, it was during COVID, and I was like, okay, well, I might as well, I'm not working, so there's no games, so I might as well catalog this stuff, and it takes some time. So I have a folder of stuff that I need to categorize it, but I think it's cool to just look back and be, especially when I'm doing stories too. I might forget
Hmm.
which cards of a player that I have. So I'll, if they have a big game or something, I'll go into my spreadsheet, look up what I have, and then I'll be like, oh, okay, I'll do a story about that one. So, or if a team's in the playoffs, just sort of sorting by that team and looking at all the different players that I've shot on that team. Um, so it's just sort of a good resource and a good way of me to categorize everything. And I don't know if other people think it's interesting to look at, but I have it linked on there, and I've heard some people think, it is fun to see, the different cards that are on there. So
I'll definitely be diving into that. I think that's great that you make that available. Can we expect to see a Super Bowl post? Do you have a photography of both the Rams and perhaps even the Bengals?
So I did not shoot the Bengals this year. I shot, I think, 3 or 4 Rams games. Um, the so the photos that I shot this year, they aren't yet on cards because a lot of the stuff that's out there right now is photos from last year, just because they're so far behind with COVID stuff, still in production issues. So um, I don't really have any Rams cards to show. I will be shooting the Super Bowl though,
Oh,
which
exciting!
which is very exciting. It will be my first Super Bowl that I'm shooting, and yeah, I
Congratulations.
look forward to being able to document it. Hoping for a great game. I was hoping, I was looking forward to maybe seeing Tom Brady in his last game. Not a big Brady
Hmm.
fan, but thought it'd be cool to document that. And hoping for a different team besides the Rams because I already shoot them a lot during the season. But yeah, it's gonna be a good great thing to do. So looking forward to it.
I got a tip for you, a little scouting tip.
Okay.
A photograph number 9 on Cincinnati.
Okay.
He's one you want to keep an eye
Okay. No, I think one is also good too.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. All
Yes,
right.
he is. As you can maybe tell, I am a big Bengals fan.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
Well, thank you, of course. But like I said earlier, congratulations to you as well.
Thanks.
That's an incredible feeling to be headed to the Super Bowl. Do you have any special plans? Is there anything unique about SoFi Stadium compared to other places that you regularly shoot? Anything that maybe changes in a big event like this? More noise, kind of around the stands, that
Yeah.
sort of
So
thing.
for the Super Bowl, they only allow a very limited amount of photographers on the field versus normal
Mm.
games. And with COVID, they're even letting less. So like a wire service like Getty Images, they have only one spot on the field and normally have like 4.
Wow.
So I'll be shooting from the stands with a bunch of other photographers as well, and yeah, you can get some different angles from there. You just got to do the best of what you can, and the the thing is to just sort of not get caught up in the game and not get caught up in the crowd noise. And uh, the maybe the one good thing about shooting in the stands is I'll be in one place, so I'll be running up and down the
Hmm.
sidelines. Especially the quarterbacks during the season. There's limited areas where you can really get good shots of the quarterbacks. So just running up and down the sideline, getting in those angles, I won't have to do during the Super Bowl. So I'm actually looking forward to just not doing that and being able to just focus on the area that I'm shooting. So, um, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be a big game, big crowd. SoFi is not the best stadium to shoot at. They have this digital video board that runs sort of low on around the whole bowl of the stadium. So anytime you take a picture of the quarterback, you have this sort of video board color behind him, which is really annoying.
And this is different than the video screen that's overhead
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
people are familiar with.
If you look at, I posted a card of Tom Brady that I shot at SoFi this year, and if you look at sort of right behind him, there's this bluish, yellowish board color, and it's the Rams color, or it's the Chargers color, and it just sort of it makes it really tough to get nice, clean photos of the quarterback. So,
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
Are there other stadiums or arenas that are either a favorite of yours to shoot at, or ones that pose problems like that? Like when you're, because I know a lot of cards people are most familiar, or I guess a lot of the main cards you always see are like close-ups of players, right? But then there's sets like, I know Stadium Club, like I bought it just because I thought it was a cool photo being in
right.
architecture. It's like a Bo Bichette rookie where he's like running out on the
Yep.
field and it's got the tower in the
Yep.
back. And I was just like, man, that's cool. It's like documenting the stadium from like an architectural standpoint. And he's almost like a secondary figure, even
Right.
though it's his card. Um, are there like places that you love shooting at to capture some of those like larger moments, or do you try to focus on like a player, like a detail of the player of what their personality is, or swing, or shot, or something?
Um, I like to focus more on the details. There are definitely opportunities like a Dodger Stadium. There's when there's a nice sunset, there's palm trees behind the pitcher. You can get
Hmm.
some nice photos there. Um, some stadiums just aren't very picturesque, like Angel Stadium. It's just a stadium. There's nothing unique about it. I think shooting at the Giant Stadium, the Coke bottle and the slide, you see that in a lot of behind pitchers throwing pitches there on some cards. The the stadium, uh, City Field, where they have the apple that comes up when they hit
Hmm.
a home run. Those are the things that you want sort of in the picture, to sort of tell the story. Okay, well that's at City Field, or a picture of the left fielder at Fenway Park with the green monster behind it. Those are the things, like you mentioned, the nice picture of Bo Bichette with the Sky Dome. I don't even know what it's called now. Um,
Yeah, I can't think of it, but the like
Thomas
iconic.
Rogers Center or something. I don't know.
Yeah, Rogers
Yeah,
something, I think. Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, and like at Petco Park, they have the warehouse. So you try to incorporate them, but you just sort of have to let it come to you too, and not just overly focus on I want to capture that photo of him doing this, because then you can waste a whole game of trying to get the picture and miss everything else. So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
there's definitely, I feel like in baseball there's more of those sort of unique stadium things that you can add in pictures versus football, um, or definitely not in basketball because everything sort of looks the same in an arena. So
Hmm.
Do you still go to games just as a fan and leave your camera behind, or is that difficult? I mean, given that you are extremely close to the action in your line of work.
yeah, it's funny. I can't remember the last time I went to a game. I think it was, trying to think, maybe 7 years ago. I took my then girlfriend, fiance, now wife, to a Giants game up in the Bay Area, um, which was a lot of fun. But yeah, I haven't been to a lot of games as fans, and it's weird now because like you know I'm so close to the action. I'm spoiled. I'm not necessarily enjoying the game as a fan while I'm working, but to go to a game and to sit so far away and be like, huh, I'd rather be down with all the other photographers during this game. So I'm sure we'll take our son whenever he comes to a game, and I'll probably get to go out to more games then. But it definitely I grew up such a fan, and that was such a big part of my life, going to sporting events. And I shot a golf tournament over the weekend in San Diego, and I used to go to it a lot as a fan. And um, yeah, it's just different now. It's cool, but it's also like I miss that. I miss watching game. Even watching games, like I don't watch a ton because I'm working a lot, and working at night. So I think 2 weekends ago I watched all the NFL games because I wasn't working that day, and it was it was just brought back a lot of memories and fun things of like, oh, I need to watch some more games and just enjoy that part of it too. So
You picked a good weekend to tune in,
it
that's
was
for
a good
sure.
weekend. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I can definitely like understand where you're coming from of like experience a game from that lens, if you will. Like,
Hmm.
not to have a pun of words here, but like it's much different than going to a game from like a normal fan. So if you're in the dugout next to all these players, like hearing them talk, hearing their like interactions with each other, like there's why buy a ticket? I would just
Right.
bring my camera and say I'm working and go like
Well,
go watch the game that
it's
way.
funny because my wife's uncle, she got us tickets to a Braves game a couple of years ago. I think it was before COVID. I guess that was the last game we went to at the Braves new stadium, and they're pretty close. They're good tickets, but the whole game I was like looking at the light and like looking at you know photographers and what they were shooting, and I'm like dissecting like, well, if I was at this game I would be over here and shooting this. And it seemed like their security there was way more lax than like the security that I deal with, especially at Dodger Stadium and other
Mm.
stadiums. They were just letting the photographers just sort of get really close to the players, like on the on deck circle during in between innings. And then I was like, what is going on? Like, I want to shoot here. And it's hard to turn that like lens off of just constantly sort of analyzing like, oh, yeah, I wonder if anyone got that shot. Like, oh, I need to look on the wire to see what they got and what they didn't get. And um, so it's definitely hard to turn that, at least for me, it's hard to turn that off when I'm at a game. I'm
Hmm.
thinking like, oh, I wish there was a USC football game that my wife and I went to, and um, Will Ferrell was on the sidelines, and I'm like, for a half hour in my head, I was just like, oh, I wish I was at down on the field. I'd be taking pictures of him, and why aren't people taking pictures of him? And like, it was just going through my head, and I couldn't turn that off, and I should have just been enjoying the game. But um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think you're just being in that mode constantly when I'm working, it's what I know now. So hopefully when we take our son to a game, it'll be a little different, and I can turn that off and enjoy that a little more.
Well, I think too, like as your child like gets older, it's almost like you can share that aspect of what you do. Like that would give a whole new insight and create like an awesome memory of like, wow, my dad like photographed these like incredible athletes and his works on these cards. So it's like, I mean, that's like a really cool story that most people probably don't get to experience. So that's like experiencing the game in a whole new way that is pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Well, and it also sounds to me, that there's a certain bit of learning still going on, right? I mean,
Oh,
you're a student
constantly.
of the game,
Yeah, constantly.
just like an athlete would be, and so it's not anything crazy. Certainly, we're taking advantage of those opportunities as artists to continue to refine our craft. To Chris's point, it'll be a unique perspective, and I'm sure you guys will have a good time. A good problem to have, right?
Yeah.
Spoiled at the live sporting events. But it's a good segue into one of the questions that we had written down. What's the best part about having a full-time job and what we kind of now call the hobby, or something that would be hobby adjacent, right? I mean, I imagine, you would consider yourself a full-time sports card photographer, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a full-time sports photographer, and you
Mm-hmm.
know, a large part of the sales that my photos do are on sports cards. But they also appear on magazines and ESPN.com and other things like that. But my passion is with sports cards. So like I said earlier, when I go to a game, I'm looking to capture the photo that appears on the card. Where the photographer next to me, they're probably not even thinking about that. They're just thinking of getting a good action shot that might run in the paper, and that's their lens that they're shooting through in their mind. But um, we all have our skills, and I feel like one skill that I enjoy and that I feel like I'm sharpening as the games go on is taking pictures that do appear on cards. And I feel like the amount of photos of mine that appeared on cards last year just shows that what I am doing is good, and that's always good feedback, and to just sort of keep doing it and keep studying. You can always get better. You can always find new angles, or just sort of refine your craft, and yeah, it's it's a joy. I mean, it's not really work, but it is work. When I shoot a game, I have to get photos up during the game, and then after the game, and then I have to go through them uh, after the next couple days after that, and get more photos up. So I have a stockpile of games that I have backlog now that I have to get through, and it could be a grind to go through 2,000 photos and wither it down to 50 or so, and um, but it beats working at a day job and working in an office, and I love sports and I love cards, and can't think of a better thing for me to do. So
Well, the proof
Uh,
is in the pudding, man. And I just want to follow up. Yeah, you said that now 2,000 shots. Is that about, on average, how many you'll end up with at the end of a given game?
yeah, I mean, more it depends on the sport. Sometimes I'll shoot more than that. Sometimes, if I'm shooting, like I shot Tom Brady this year when the Bucks came to play the Rams, and I shot a ton of photos that game,
Yeah.
probably more than I needed to. Um, but it's just, it's the photo that you don't take that you're like, oh, maybe I should have taken that. You can always delete it later. Just more work for you in the end, but yeah, I like to try to get a bunch of different angles and try a bunch of different things, and sometimes it adds more work for me in the end, but you can just select all and delete if if they're no good, and go from there. So, but yeah, I mean, I think so. The way it works for me is like, say, a typical baseball game. I'll
Hmm.
shoot the starting pitchers, um, and from both sides, and normally like the third or fourth inning, I'll do like a first edit where I'll put like maybe 10 pictures up on the wire, which will include the pitchers and any sort of runs that have scored, or things like that. And then after the game, another 20 or 30, and then so you're hustling to get stuff up, and uh, the more time it takes you to post stuff, the more stuff that you might be missing out on during the game, because you can't sort of do both.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's just sort of getting your workflow faster and faster, where you can get stuff up, and you can get back out there, and keep taking pictures. So
you mentioned uploading those like immediately, like during the game and right after. Do you have a kind of a quick post production thing that you kind of set everything, or are you just kind of uploading like raw from the camera to the site?
no, so normally as I'm taking pictures, I'll tag them in my camera if I feel like they're a good photo that I want to potentially put up quickly. So then I'll upload them all to my computer. I'll look at the tagged ones first. I'll crop them, make any sort of adjustments to color, tones, and try to get as perfect as I can in the camera, so I don't have to make a ton of tweaks. Um, and then I go in and I have to caption the photo. So Shohei Ohtani is throwing a pitch during the first inning of blah 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 blah. So it's captioning, and then uploading. So it's downloading, uh, cropping them, toning them, captioning them, uploading them. So um, in the beginning, it was all new for me. So I was very slow at it, and I'd get really frustrated, because it would just take me a while to know like where I should be cropping a photo, and maybe not necessarily getting it perfect in the camera, like I'm more apt to now. And so I think just getting better at that too just has been part of the process. And there's a bunch of shortcuts in terms of we normally don't have to type the whole player's name out. So like for we have this thing called code replacement. So you type in like maybe A for Angels, and then uh, like 27, and then it'll fill it in. It'll say Los Angeles Angels center fielder Mike Trout. So there's ways to like speed up the process in terms of captioning stuff, which helps. But you got to get it right too. I mean, you can't caption a photo that's of Mike Trout and write Shohei Ohtani. I mean, it's you got to be quick, but you also got to slow down and double check your work before you upload everything. So, and there's a lot of stress that you put on yourself and anxiety that you put on yourself to, especially if you hear like the crowd in the background, a Dodger Stadium, they have the TV on. So, okay, I just missed a home run. Like I need to get back out there. Like, why is this taking so long? Why is my computer slowing down? Like, there's just sort of pressures that you put on yourself, and that, as you do it longer and longer, you just sort of, got to calm yourself down and be like, okay, well, I missed that. Like it's, lost. Like there's no point in like thinking about it anymore. Just got to get, do what I'm doing and concentrate on that and then get back out there. So, but yeah, it can be stressful at times. Basketball, we edit at halftime. So, halftime is 15 minutes, I think, in college, 20 minutes in the pros, something like that. So yeah, I mean, you know when the clock's coming down. There's a clock in the media room, so you see it counting down. And college football games, you see the players coming back out. You hear the kickoff. You're like, okay, I need to get going. Like I need to get back out there. Yeah, it's not all. There's definitely stressful times throughout the games that you have to keep up with. So.
Well, and what sounds like an incredible amount of strategy on your part as well when it comes to the baseball games, and deciding when to break and how quickly, what photos to select, etc.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like for baseball, I try to go in and after maybe certain batters have hit. So like if Mike Trout just hit, for the most part, he's probably not going to coming up in the next inning, and the 6, 7, 8, and 9 batters, like, okay, like I'm missing them, but that's okay. So, timing it that way is definitely something always in my mind. Like, okay, I'll go in after Fernando Tatis hits, and then I'll edit really quick. Or I need to stay here because he's due up fifth in the next inning, and I don't want to sort of screw myself and be in there and him get up. So. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, maybe I don't know if I'm the only photographer who thinks that way. I know some people probably do as well, but you have to. I mean, you're making money off the images that you're selling, so you have to be smart about who you're taking pictures of and when you're taking pictures of them. And I don't edit late in games because you can't miss the game winning home run. You gotta be out there for that. So you gotta pick and choose. Baseball is definitely harder in that sense of you miss stuff. And in basketball and football, you're in there at halftime, and you might miss. Say they kick off and the guy returns the kick for a touchdown. You might miss that, but I mean, it is what it is. It's baseball. You have to be a little more selective with when you choose to edit. So.
One thing, so you had mentioned that the companies will, buy these photos and it's kind of out of your hands. A thing I'm curious about, like, so I noticed some of your photos have been turned into more like illustrations on cards. Have you, so I'm assuming you don't know that's happening. Like, and have you been pleasantly surprised that somebody has taken your photo and made it into this? Or has there ever been like a case where you're like, oh man, I really like this photo and it's been photoshopped or illustrated, or jerseys have been swapped and you're like, oh man, they kind of removed some of the essence of the photo?
Yeah, great question. No, I think the first photo that I had that was uh, illustrated was from the Living set. I think it was Miguel Andujar from the Yankees or something like that. And it looked like my photo, and I was I did the comparison, and I wasn't really sure at that point if they were using photos for, you know, just a guide, or if they were actually using photos and drawing sort of over the photo to make their illustration. And I connected with the artist, and she mentioned that they do pull all their images from Getty, in terms of photos that they draw. And yeah, it's really cool. I think it's, it's something that's just sort of exploded in the hobby the last 2 years in terms of getting all these artists work out there, and there's so many unique different styles. um, I'm sort of more old school in sort of the style of like making it look like the photo versus sort of grunching it up, or doing some of the different things that a lot of the Project 70 guys are doing. But I still think it's cool. But yeah, it's always cool to see that my photo gets chosen um, for art. There's a couple guys that I follow on Instagram, and they'll post one, and I'll be like, "Oh, thanks for using my photo." And so yeah, that's really cool to see. I feel like the Photoshop thing is just it's wild, because when I was growing up, I remember, like, I don't know if it was like 1987 tops or something, but they would do these Photoshop jerseys that, oh, they were so bad. I mean, it was like, just weird colors, and like it looked like they were just using the most. If you look at them now, it's like the most archaic like software, which probably at the time was like top of the line software. Um, but they were you see them and you're like, oh, that's definitely Photoshop. Now that they've gotten so good at it, um, that a lot of the ones I post, I hear from people, they'll DM me and they'll be like, I didn't even know that was photoshopped. It looks like
Hmm.
a real jersey. And
Yep.
with COVID, they normally do a rookie shoot. Panini does a rookie shoot with both the NBA players and the NFL players, where they bring all the rookies in. They give them all their new uniforms for the NFL teams, and they spend 3 days just taking pictures for cards, basically. And with COVID, they couldn't do that because they couldn't bring all the people in, to one spot. So what they did is, for most of last year, most of the photos are college jerseys that are photoshopped with their NFL and NBA jersey. And some are better than others. There's definitely a couple that I'll see and I'll be, oh, you know, I don't think that's a great job. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, they do a pretty good job of that now. And they have to go, I think they have to go through like the Players Association to get them approved,
Hmm.
to make sure that the uniform is exactly right, and there's nothing that they put on there that is not accurate. But yeah, they do that way more now. And I've done a ton of stories about them at the last couple months,
Yeah, I
especially
noticed
football
it.
ones, and some basketball ones. And they actually did a basketball shoot this year for all the rookies, so
Hmm.
uh, which is not good for me, because my college photos won't be photoshopped, but it's fine. But
Well, I noticed it with like Evan Mobley on the Cavs. You
yep,
posted like a USC
yep,
game, and like Peyton Pritchard. I was looking like for the Celtics, and it's just, yeah, it's crazy if you don't know that, like, if you didn't know that you were the photographer of that, and
right,
see these stories on Instagram, like, it's
no
crazy
idea.
what yeah, it's
Yeah,
not the old days of like a player's been traded and it's just like a cutout V-neck anymore. It's like the waves of the jersey of how they're moving. It's like
yeah,
they have it down to a science here.
yeah. I
So
shot I shot Jalen Hurts when he was at Oklahoma, and a ton of Jalen Hurts cards from last year of them just taking the Oklahoma, and transforming it into an Eagles jersey. And they
Wow.
used the white jersey and just added some color to it. And it looks right on. I mean, I would have been able to tell, um, that they did that. So I feel like the white jerseys that they Photoshop are always, for the most part, pretty good. It's the
Hmm.
ones where they're photoshopping it into maybe a darker color jersey. Those can get a little, not as realistic, I guess. Um, but I mean, they still do a great job. There's no way that I'd be able. I had someone ask me like, "Do you do the photoshopping of the jersey with the new, the professional jersey?" And be like, "I wouldn't even know where to start for that. Like, that's not my skill set." And yeah, they would not want me to do any photoshopping on the photos to put the new jersey on. I would just like draw, cross out and draw some stuff on and be like, "Okay, here you go." So
We'd
Well,
be back to the 80s.
yeah, you don't want that.
well, it's interesting, like, whether it's like a portrait photographer for a corporate office or fashion or architecture, like the photographer is like either like I've worked with photographers that work with editors, so then like if they don't do the editing themselves, they have like a go-to person. So
Mhm.
it's all part of the workflow. I mean, if you would have a whole nother arm of your business of like if you were editing all of these photos from, you know, end or like photo in game to like end product on card to be able to plug
Right.
into a card design. Like that's a lot of time that goes into that. It's really interesting, I
Yeah, and
think.
some
So
of the bigger events, the photographers will have editors. So, like for the World Series, for the Super Bowl, actually, I have someone who is on my team and a great photographer, and he's going to be editing my photos for me. So, um, I can concentrate on the game. I don't have to worry about missing a touchdown or stuff like that. And so that definitely helps. That puts you able to focus on the game, and all the other stuff can be someone else can tackle. But yeah, I mean, owning it from the beginning of the shoot to the end product, um, for the most part, I feel like the end product looks good, so I'm happy with what they do.
mhm,
And I have enough things on my plate and enough games that I need to shoot that I wouldn't necessarily want to be involved with that. Um, so you got to stick with the skills that you have and do those well, and let the people who are better at certain things to do make them shine at what they do. So
for sure, that's how I operate. You work with people that you trust with their skill set for a reason, or you bring on certain
right,
partners, whether it's film or photo or
yep,
graphics or whatever. So
Well, it's a
couldn't agree more.
fascinating dynamic, to really kind of let these photos out into the world, and not knowing where, like to your point, who's going to pick them up or what they'll do with it, but to have them come back with regularity, of course, speaking
right,
to how good you are at sports photography, but what an enjoyable cycle, right? To kind of continuously release that dove out into the wild and then have it come back.
right. Yeah, no, it just keeps me going too. Like I'll see stuff that makes its way on cards, and I'll be happy with it. But then I'll be like, okay, I can do better next year. I can, you
Mm-hmm.
know, what am I missing that they're taking other people's images from? Sometimes it's nothing that I'm missing. They're just, I might not shoot that team, or they just might choose an image that someone else shot, and that's fine. But if I'm missing um, an opportunity, then I try to learn from that. I think the biggest learning I had last year looking at pitcher cards were um, taking a picture of a pitcher before he's about to throw. A lot of them, they keep the ball, in the glove, and then when they sort of come through their delivery, they'll move the ball sort of down below
Mm-hmm.
the glove,
Mm-hmm.
and it just sort of, just for a split second, you see the ball clear as day, sort of in their hands with the. And I saw that on a bunch of cards, and I was like, okay, I need to start capturing this for all the pitchers. And um, I did it for Otani, but he had like just a weird look on his face, so that didn't work out. But um, I shot Max Scherzer when he was on the Dodgers. Uh, I think his first start, that pitcher, and it's been on like 3 or 4 cards. And there's a satisfaction and a sense of, okay, I did what I was trying to do, and it worked out. So just stuff like that, that sort of just keeps me going. And okay, well, what can I do next year that I didn't do last year, that uh, that can take my photography to the next level and give photos on cards, to the next level too. Because I think there's a lot of great photographers out there whose card or photos, come out on cards, and they don't get any credit. We don't get our names on anything, and that's fine. Um, there's some photos on cards that aren't very good at all, and you wonder, well, why would a photo editor choose that photo? And we're not involved in that process. I'd love to sit down with a photo editor and just sort of see, are they just not necessarily lazy, but do they just
Mm-hmm.
select a picture and just use it and not think, anything, really dissect it like a photographer might dissect it, or do they do that? Um, another aspect that I'd love to hear is what the players think of their photos. Do they like how they're being represented on cards? Do they not? Um, if they don't, like what photos would they like to see on there?
Mhm.
That's just topics that aren't discussed at all in the hobby, and um, there's a couple of us diehards that are out here, and maybe those conversations will happen at some point, which I think would be
Well, I
really
feel,
cool.
yeah, no, I
Especially,
feel like,
there's a couple players who really collect cards too, like Evan Longoria on the Giants. Um, I'd love to sit down and show cards to a player who collects cards and hear what he has to say about them. Like, oh, that angle's terrible. Like, I don't, I look silly trying to throw the ball, or, I didn't even get, there's tricks that you can do with, especially with batters in baseball, where, they might hit a long foul ball and it looks like a home run in a pitcher, but it's not. And, there's a fine line between posting that picture and then posting a picture where you can tell, like, just looking at the picture, that, oh, that was definitely a foul ball, like the way his body is tilted, like he's not looking at the field, he's looking over there.
mhm.
So there's tricks that you can do, but I think it would be wild to just sort of hear what players think of their cards and their photos. And
Yeah,
um,
it's you brought up a few interesting things. Like, I know AJ Dillon on the Packers collects
mhm.
cards. He's got a big following, and I think he like is trying to collect all of his one of one cards or something. But it's interesting too. Like, you see, well, there's a few things. You see a lot of the same photos being
Yeah,
selected on cards, and so it's like, if you have, you know, this one Lonzo Ball card, do you really need the fifth and sixth one of that?
right.
Because it's the same photo that's been used.
Yep.
And I know that has to do with like photo availability, or, but like if you're at a game and there's hundreds of photos of that one game, like it's maybe a little more due diligence or more collaboration between the card manufacturers and photographers. Like, it wouldn't be that difficult to set up a couple workshops. Hey, let's bring in these 20 photographers, and we're gonna, discuss how we can have better photography to create a better, not even better photography, selecting photography in a better way to make a better end product. um like, how many cards do you need of the same pose? So
Yeah, I feel
yeah,
like I feel that's more in football and basketball than it is maybe in baseball. Baseball, they'll reuse some photos, but not nearly as much as basketball and football. With especially if they do those rookie shoots, they just use those photos over and over in all the
Hmm.
releases. And yeah, I mean, it's, if I was collecting a player, I'd be like, why do I need this card? I already have five of it, in different formations of it. But um, yeah, it's definitely, there could be a little more synergy between the companies and the photographers, and I think uh, I think it would be good for everyone. It'd be good for the company because they'd get what they're looking for, um, and it would be good for the photographers because they would have an idea of what the companies are looking for too. Maybe with Fanatics, maybe they'll do
Hmm.
something like that with their creative
yeah.
team. But
Well,
um,
I think as we see a lot of these companies embracing artists and illustrators in a
mhm,
lot of these like tops 2020 project and top 70 project,
mhm.
to me, photography is up there with illustrators, right? It's a whole nother craft that deserves the same amount of attention. And I know on the 97 metal universe cards that Arena
Hmm.
designed, they had like sketches by, and it had the illustrator's like name on it. So
Hmm.
to me, as a person in marketing and storytelling, like I would love to see like photographer by, like, you know, and have people's names on there on these cards. It's something that hopefully, yeah, Fanatics says, hey, we want to set up shoots. Or I remember there was like a Deion Sanders like prime time card where he's like in this like crazy like leather jacket, and it's like some photographers could probably come up with some really cool concepts for cards, you know, and I'm sure you would love to be part of that conversation with Fanatics. So maybe hopefully somebody at Fanatics sees this episode and reaches out to you and
Yeah.
can
Well,
get
I
some
think it's
photo shoots
interesting
going.
too, and how it ladders back to the player photographer interaction that you talked about. You know, it sounds like a player hasn't reached out to you about their photography on the card,
No.
probably because they haven't connected the dots, right? Or they
Right.
don't. It's not printed on the card, obviously, and there's no way. They probably talked about you indirectly at Tops or
Right.
Upper Deck, right? Like, I love this image. I don't like this image.
I mean,
Um,
even if it's just players, like, you know, give them 100 cards to look at, even if they're not of
yeah,
them, and see which ones they like. You know,
yeah.
that would be really interesting. I mean, pictures, like what angles do they feel like show the artistic elements of a picture that they, you know, like. Some players,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that doesn't go through their mind at all. They could care less. But you know, there are those who, you know, who do enjoy that sort of stuff and do enjoy the history of the game and how it's documented, and yeah, I think that would be really interesting. I mean, it'd be good. It would be. I'd love to be a fly on the wall and just, you know, hear what they have to say. And yeah, maybe I'll bring some cards to the next baseball game I shoot and be like, "What do you think?"
These athletes are so often consumed, right, in a certain way. We're used to, you know, watching them on TV, and can sometimes lose sight of the fact that, hey, you know what? I bet you he has some opinions about
Right.
how he prefer to be photographed, right?
And you
He
know
or he
it.
or she,
You know, they might be furious. They might be like, "Oh, you
right?
know, every year these pictures are just terrible of me," and that could
Mm-hmm.
be, you know, solved by, you know, a quick conversation to even, you know, Top saying, I don't, you know, I don't like these photos of me hitting, you know, I'd like this instead. And that just sort of relayed to people. One thing that you mentioned, Chris, that I thought of was there's some upper deck cards. I think, want to say in like the early '90s, maybe baseball, where there's a picture of a player, and then on the back there's a picture of the photographer who took the picture, and a little like
Mm.
blurb about him, his name, and like just sort of a little blurb about, you know, where he shot it. And I came across the colleague's card the other day, and he got a good laugh out of it. But yeah, you know, they did do those things at some point, so it'd be
Mm-hmm.
cool to see those brought up again. But Upper Deck, those photographers were employed by Upper Deck, so it's a little different.
Mm.
Back in the day when that stuff, when they had budgets for that sort of stuff, so
Yeah.
they were not only highlighting photographers, they were highlighting their photographers and
Mm.
branding them. And you know, when you see this guy, this is an Upper Deck photographer. So, but just something that came into my mind that I thought of when you were talking about that.
Yeah, as long as we don't get the and not to knock anybody's work, but the old like I think it's Bowman 90. I can't. It's in the 90s
Oh yeah,
where like Manny Ramirez
yeah, yeah.
looks like it's like a senior high school
No,
photo,
yeah.
or Mariano Rivera is like they're all in like button downs, or like Chipper Jones has
Hmm.
like jean shorts on and a
Yeah,
button down.
yeah.
It's it's like I like obscure things. I like weird, you know, things that are so it's like cool for that instance because it's like so bizarre as this is like somebody's sports card, but it's also like just pretty odd. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
not one
no,
of my favorites,
it doesn't fit. I agree.
but yeah. So, well, Brian, thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to just give a quick plug for the best way for people to find you? I know we're going to have your Instagram on this whole time. So, but if there's anywhere else or how you prefer
I'm on
people to follow you.
Twitter. I don't really post much on Twitter. Sometimes I'll retweet people who post pictures of cards that my photos are on. But Sports Card Photo on Twitter. So, and I'm in the process of launching like a YouTube channel, but I've also been in that process for over a year now. So, but I'd love to get to a point where, um, I open a pack of cards or even open, some of the cards that I've bought and just talk about them and talk about the designs and talk about what I think makes a good photo. Um, not only my work, but other people's work too. And I think that would be unique to, just open a pack of cards and talk about the design, talk about the photos and how they come together. So hopefully at some point this year, I don't know if it'll happen, but that's definitely a goal of mine to get that up there. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to have you back on and where we talk about like photography. We pick a whole set that, is a favorite of yours
Yeah,
or something, and we can talk about, whether you have cards in it or not, or why we like the photography of it. I mean, that's the whole goal of this channel is to kind of focus on that and kind of um, value aside. Like we don't really care what the value of the card is. We want to hear
right.
about the story of what went into it or the design of the graphic design of it, the photography, the illustration. So,
Yeah, that's really
yeah,
cool.
we'd love to have you back on.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, Brian. And I definitely encourage all of our followers to go check out your Instagram page once again. Just incredible storytelling and just if you love sports, if you love photography, if you love card art, just go check it out. It's a fascinating just archive of information and just a really really fun trip. Please do yourself a favor and go check that out. And Brian, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. And if anyone has any players that they want to see featured, DM me. And I always like to hear from people in terms of what cards they want featured. I don't I don't do a lot of women's sports, but today is when we're filming this is Women in Sports Day, I believe. So I'm doing a Megan Rapinoe story on a card for tonight. So, um, but yeah, I have a bunch of Tiger Woods cards that I haven't featured. So if you have a favorite player that you want me to write about, send me a note and see what I can dig up.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Brian. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Go ahead and please subscribe and follow us on Instagram at Art of the Card Pod. And, we're not getting a ton of messages right now on our comments on videos, but we do respond to all of them. So, and we'll continue to do so no matter, how big the channel gets, hopefully in the future. So thank you, everybody. It's been awesome. And Brian, thanks again for joining us and sharing a lot of what you do and how you do it. So
Thanks,
thanks.
guys.